There seems to be an awful lot of sad stories in the news today, and there are thousands missing. Does anybody care? We built a channel where we talk about those faces. Talking news with Debbie. Cassie Barnes has still not been found, and it's been 2 years since her case first hit the spotlight. Breaking. Chad Gable and Vallow both behind bars. Sarah Galloway was found. She wasn't found alive. What happened to Sarah Galloway?
It's too heartbreaking to share.
Children are still missing. Children like Dorsey. You're in shame. You just got away with it. Welcome to Talking News. Hello everyone. My name is Debbie. We use big stories to push little faces.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chasing a Murder Talking News. Before we get started, look for that subscribe button. Push it if you enjoy the video and the content that I put out so that it helps us get out there a little bit better. It tells YouTube that you enjoy the content. I appreciate it so much. And also, hit the like button and say hello in the comments. As you know, I spare you guys a bunch of blah blah. And we go straight into it. We're going to go into Life Beyond the Grave, Part 52 of the Lori Vallow case. Probably one of the most devastating and shocking cases, as far as I'm concerned. What makes a very religious, loving mom turn into something everyone, including her family, wouldn't expect? We've been working on the 2015 timeline, and we know that there's a blood moon approaching, and there's a few people within the LDS community branching out in their own direction, claiming that the blood moon is bringing signs of end days. Peggy, Julie Rowe, Chad Daybell, Spencer, and a few more. And right now we are in, like I mentioned earlier, 2015, which I believe is one of the main years that kind of sparked this fire. And Chad Daybell is speaking out more often about his near-death experience at events. His book publishing company, he admits, has given him this path, which is for him to meet these wonderful authors such as Suzanne Freeman, Julie Rowe, Hector Sosa, who have also shared their near-death experiences, because it's from those that they gain this beautiful gift to see future events and gain visionary gifts. He says in one of his writings that he has been given the privilege to see the same future events as they have, and admits that he's taken those same futuristic events and incorporated them into his novels. While he claims it was August of 1985 when he was 17, his senior year, that's when all of this begins. It was mostly, I would have to say, 1988. He was overwhelmed and very taken by sports. He was very intrigued by sports, and that includes baseball, basketball, and we learned that he played JV baseball. He was excited to be what he titled himself as the star basketball player on their church team. And it's that team that actually went to camp at the Flaming Jorge Reservoir in northern Utah, where he jumped off a cliff, which we've learned in future series. And he's saying that he had a near-death experience after hitting the water. And that cliff was about 60 feet above the surface of the water. For me, it seemed that he got quite traumatized by the height of this cliff. And he said that they were stupid teenagers and that he was very intimidated. But Chad's friends actually encourage him to take that leap. It's at this moment that he believes that he has an event in his life that's so traumatic that it's going to make a huge difference. And he has a sign. When his body hit the water, his spirit had popped out through his head, but parts of his spirit was stuck in his body thanks to his knees. And so his spirit was not able to make its complete exit of his body. And as his body made its way to the surface of the water, it's at that point that his spirit was sucked back into place. He said it seemed that it took a while for him to resurface because his friends had actually jumped into the water to rescue him. And it was something that snapped in him that day that made him have less interest in sports from then on. And this is the reason for his sports talent to have faded away. And it's at this point that sports is put on the back burner and that he starts eating through the religious books. And those scriptures that he was reading were of that of Cleon Hugh Nibley, Bruce R. McConkie, and several more. He really has a strong impression that he will need this information for later in his life. For some reason, he mentions that he has a social life and a good group of friends surrounding him, which helps steer clear of the people and situations that might have led him into trouble. But at that point in his life, he knew when he hit that water, his personal veil was torn open and didn't seal back up properly. So there you go, guys. For those of you just tuning in later, we're doing a little brief overview of how we see Chad's gift start to grow, especially gaining momentum, power, and where it all stems from. And here's what's really important for those that are following this story and keep hearing about his special gifts where he can see in the future, which is something he really seems to be very intrigued with. He says he occasionally gets glimpses of his future, and it was annoying but tolerable. And 8 years later, that's all changed because he has another water-related experience that really threw the barn doors open, so to speak, where he claims he got hit by a wave, and this second near-death experience really just blew the doors open to where he was just overwhelmed by these amazing gifts. He was able to walk within the spirit world and the human world, and his powers were growing. And as those powers grow, he starts to find interest in other gifts such as astral projection. And at some point during this, in between this time and in the future, his family will actually be witnesses to his astral projection out of body experience. Let's not forget about the heavenly voices reaching out to him and giving him ideas of what he and his family are going to experience in the future. Similar to Noah's Ark, when God spoke to Noah and warned him to build this ark. This was to prevent everything from being lost during the great flood. So Chad has fed his children with this idea that they have a particular role to play in this new future, in this new world. And if you're tracking his timeline, you need to write down that in the late 1990s, he was writing his novel, Escape to Zion, when he began having many dreams and visions related to his family's future. The year of Chad's blog is 2015, and it really starts around August. So here he describes that when he was on his mission with his good buddy, Elder Hempworth, they went to an apartment which Chad describes in his blog as one of the scariest apartment buildings he had ever seen. Graffiti was scrawled actually all in the hallways, and the building was completely trashed. Chad said he had a complete fear of even walking into this building, but they felt compelled to do so. And we're not going to go into details on this, maybe we will later, but this is where he really starts to believe in the healing power of the spirit. They could pray for people who had injuries and then they would be healed. Chad's mission seemed to be full of voices. So he could hear a lot of voices during his time serving as a missionary, which has had several people following this case wonder if there's more, going on with Chad than people realize. Something I do want to point out before we move any further is his relationship to Tammy and how they met. He said that he was going through a yearbook where he sees his future wife's face, Tammy Douglas, and he said when he sees her face in that book, he felt the most electrifying shock of his life. Because we've covered this too, he had been told that there was going to be a woman with short blonde hair that would be his future wife. And so he took it as he found her in this yearbook, and so he goes and seeks out Tammy. And many years later, from the 1990s, September of 2015, in a post, Chad Daybell describes what he would explain as a very happy marriage to the 49-year-old Tammy Daybell. He, in fact, shared photos of their first wedding anniversary, pictures of Tammy Daybell expecting his child. And he was correct. They both seemed to be excited and happy. And I've often wondered how Tammy supported Chad's visions, and we have to assume that she must have been a grand supporter of Chad. But though Chad isn't super popular, a lot of people look back and they seem to think that Chad pulls his ideas from things that were circulating around this time from other visionaries, including some who, like, of course, Julie Rowe, who is very controversial at the time. And if some of you thought that I was going to overlook this, I'm not. A lot of his influence seems to come from Michael Straudd, who was also excommunicated from the LDS Church for promoting unusual ideas. I'm going to share a little bit with you because I think it's important, because I believe that Chad was not the only one touched by Straudd. Julie Rowe apparently was in awe of his teachings. So Strahd's teachings emphasized demonic possession as well as the ideas of portals that Chad was apparently also into in the future. And what we're learning is there are several of these people who become very interested in energy work, what Pentecostals actually call deliverance ministry, which is also related to possession and exorcism and reincarnation. So here he's learning about demonology, where evil spirits may attach themselves to us, which will be important to the future when we talk about Chad and Lori Daybell. However, guys, before Lori and Chad and Julie and Hector, these things were also being popularized by another sort of alternative LDS teaching by Douglas Mendenhall. In fact, his daughter had a near-death experience, and when she come back, she started talking about satanic hierarchies, guys, and how you can fight evil through spiritual weapons. And there was a lot more ideas where that comes from. So sharing a lot of this, what we call Pentecostal type teachings, they're kind of playing with that more than they are the Mormon religion at this point. And I'll talk a little bit off and on about him as we move forward, but just know that he is inspired by a book called Visions of Glory. Remember that book by POTUS. Those of you that know this case already know that Chad Daybell talks about ranking people by light and dark. He talks about portals. And this is where I pretty much believe that I figured out that one of his biggest motivators in his ideas is Douglas Mandel, a book called Conquering Spiritual Evil. The book starts off by giving you terms and definitions, which are very familiar. Given in alphabetical order, you have aura, bonds, casting out, contracts, and what he refers to as cords. A long, slender metaphysical structure connecting or attaching two objects to one another. They are made of astral and etheric energy and connect two people's spiritual bodies. So this isn't a physical connection, it's an energy that can also have other energies in between the two. Important to note is the fact that dark entities use cords to connect us, capable of also transferring emotional energy between these people, just like the dark can actually use it as a way to drain your energy. And there are different types of cords, so keep that in mind. Here's his definition of evil. In spite of the many definitions of evil in this text, evil will be described as events or experiences involving demons, devils, or unclean spirits. Those entities have an absence of light, working for or doing its bidding of the adversary. Then he goes to ghost hunters and debunkers. And you can see where Chad has a very big time likeness, I think, when it comes to writing and sharing his thoughts of how he sees things. Definition: entire industries have been built on this phenomenon. For example, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Harold Ramis and Columbia Pictures in 1984 release of the Ghostbusters. How could I not know that, right? So attempted to clear or cleanse the areas where these earthbound spirits and devils hunt or reside. TV shows and Hollywood portrayals sensationalize these spiritual phenomena in an attempt to entertain the idle and the curious. So there's no doubt in my mind, this is where Chad got a lot of his ideas, and I'll continue. But the premise of the author is that spiritual phenomena exist as a natural part of the mortal experience, and that anyone can utilize the power of God through knowledge, spiritual gifts, and power of the spoken word in the name of Jesus Christ to cast out evil from their own lives. With this knowledge, one can be aware of what is actually going on and therefore make conscious choices as they listen to these promptings and can choose good from evil. Moroni 7:12 through 13:15 through 19. So out of all my research that I've done, I believe that Chad Daybell mimics this guy a lot, and I think Julie Rowe does as well. And so here is the start of that really weird, strange teaching that you're hearing about in this case. And most of us never heard this name. And here are your next quite interesting words or definition of words that he uses. You see hex and then you see imp, a small demon usually trained to do specific tasks. There's other interesting things I like to go over, like this implant, but we won't right now. And then you have Lucifer. And you guys are welcome to pause this and read it because there's so much. I'll never get through with this. And then you can see he's listing things like near-death experience, where he describes that this is where a spirit will transition through the white light, meet relatives and friends, and so on. Then finally, the portal. We've heard this mentioned multiple times. This is very hard to research, to be honest, because a lot of people keep this to themselves. This is something that we won't really talk about until later, but I don't want to forget, so we'll go ahead and go over what Chad will be building in the future, these portals in the closets. So, what's their definition of a portal? So, an entryway into a physical world, ours. Think of a tunnel of light that people have reported they enter when they had a near death experience. This portal is from our world to the spirit world of paradise and prison. On the other side of the spectrum, the dark side, portals are created to move from their realm to ours. Earthbound spirits and devils are already here, so keep that in mind. Remember, Charles will later his body will be taken over by earthbound spirits or demons. But here it says demons and others have need of portals to enter our existence, to do their evil deeds, and to inflict their pain. So there are portals throughout our world where we see or they see spirits or devils that are using these portals to come into our world and cause all kinds of conflict, pain, just all kinds of chaos in our lives. Which leads us to our next word, possession. When a demon, devil, or earthbound gets through your aura and either enters your body or attaches to it with intent to control, the more it assimilates with the person, the more control it has over that individual. So we know that in the future of this story, one of the big things are zombies, and zombies are basically a person's body that's been taken over by evil spirits or spirits, oftentimes referred to as demons. The reality of evil. From the LDS perspective, one cannot accept the existence of divine angels without accepting the reality of demons. All things have their opposites, or, as our scriptures declare, there is opposition in all things. If one desires to see and experience celestial climes, one must also comprehend the depth of hellish spheres. And then he accounts Joseph Smith while he is in Liberty Jail in 1839, which you guys can pause this and read it if you like. Spirits. Spirits, as some call them, energy bodies, are the true personalities or life substance that animates the mortal body. Now remember guys, the LDS, they believe that before you're born, you're actually come from intelligences. And so that's what they're talking about here. They have intelligence and are the intelligences that have lived forever. Abraham saw these spirits or intelligences and described his vision. And again, guys, you guys can pause it and read it here. So he's trying to show you that this is something that you can find in the Bible. This is something that the very first men who documented about this subject used these words and terms. Spirit of God. I think we all understand what the Spirit of God is. But the LDS definitely have a different viewpoint. So I'm going to share it. The Spirit of God in this passage represents all those beings of light from higher or heavenly realms that can and do assist in our earthly journey. Two categories of heavenly beings exist. There are two types of beings in heaven, namely angels, who are resurrected persons, basically. And then you have bodies of flesh and bones. Secondly, the spirits of just men made perfect, they who are not resurrected, but inherit the same glory. So pay attention to this because it's almost like a ranking system. It continues with, this may also include a class of spirits whom some refer to as guardian angels. These may be relatives, friends, or unknown spirits whose role in life is to guard, protect, warn, inspire, and to assist us in our mortal existence. So you have to understand, this is where Lori Vallow is. She's learning that there's beings always around her, and they play an important role in her life. And there's also beings around her that are trying to destroy her. The same Julie Roll will share, and Chad Daybell. Boy, guys, it's so hard to not get tongue twisted. Then finally, spiritual gifts. Some individuals have held that spiritual gifts are exclusive to the righteous or only certain members of specific sections or religions. Let's pause a moment. So it's very important that you pay attention to what this guy is sharing with the world here, especially LDS members that are attached to this case. They're reading this and they're thinking, you know, I too am special. It's not like it's new, but what is new is the fact that he's saying, this is something you're granted with, and you should be a little bit more open about it. He goes to share that this is a bad mistaken belief. He said this mistaken belief has caused some level of contention among some members of the LDS community also. The scriptures teach that all people are children of God and are therefore entitled to certain individual gifts. While it is true that all spiritual gifts can be experienced in the church, gifts are not limited to any one person, section, or religion. Because we are all spirit beings and children of God, we are all connected. And I'm not saying that this isn't true, that some people might have these intuitions or things they can't explain. But this is something of a different level. And yes, we are all spiritual beings that come from the same source. And then telling these people that they have these gifts is going to it's going to create some havoc through a certain group of people. And that's what we're dealing with in this case, I believe. He continues with, every man, woman, and child ever born to this sphere comes with a gift, whether recognized, developed, or ignored. So I can hear a lot of Julie Rowe in his voice when I'm reading his writing here. And I'm going to continue. And all gifts come by the Spirit of Christ, and they come into every man severally, according to his will. Moroni 10:17. Severally means individually, independent, or apart from others. Why is every person given a different gift? For verily I say unto you, they are given the benefit of those who love me and keep my commandments, and him that seeketh so to do, that all may be benefited that seek or that ask of me. D&C 46:17. They are given to each person to benefit and help others. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward. We're losing a bit of time here. So, spiritual shield. A spiritual device of energy or light that can surround our being, preventing physical or spiritual harm to us. We're going to skip a little bit. It allows nothing of darkness to come through while allowing light to do so. And here's the interesting part is the variations are only limited by our imagination and what we desire to create. Spiritual sight. Most all mortals miss much that is going on about them because the temporal realm veils the spiritual realm until we learn to see again. Some refer to our spiritual eyes or third eye, which you'll hear Julie talk about, being open to when we see or perceive spiritual things. This spiritual sight can be bestowed spontaneously or developed. Take a second, guys, to put in my opinion of what I think here. This really sounds like Chad so much. He continues with, I've seen both. There are those who never lost their spiritual sight from birth or as they matured physically. There are more who have limited sight as a result of God spontaneously bestowing a gift on them or they're having to develop the gift to see. Whether a person never lost this sight or whether it came as a gift, we will refer to all these people as gifted, or to those who can see or who have spiritual sight. They can see what is going on in the spiritual realm, especially with angels or spirits, while many are still blind or spiritual things in this temporal realm. Many can see and understand energies, the human aura, and the other things we may not have considered to be a spiritual realm, but certainly are. Some have questioned these gifted people who can see while they themselves cannot. Some have asked in curiosity, while others have asked in skepticism, unbelief, and jealousy. Wow, guys, I don't know if I can go much further reading this. This is so ridiculous. Not the fact, I'm not saying, are there people with gifts? I don't know. But here he is judging the people who judge those that claim to have a third eye as jealous. Ouch. That is like the biggest no no as a godly person. All right, I will try to continue. So, most people can develop this gift to some extent, but with limited capabilities. However, those who do see with unlimited sight bear a weighty burden and contend mightily with evil forces, along with their enjoying the association of angels. It is a gift that is a two-edged sword that cuts both ways. So, yes, I really and truly believe, and this isn't fact, but this is what I believe after studying Chad, profiling him, and pretty much as many people as I could in this case. This is, this is a very cocky writing, claiming that these people have this third eye, and that those that don't believe them are evil or jealous. And this is something Lori Vallow uses to her advantage as well. This is a manipulation tool. And while we're speaking of tools, this is the next term. So this is very important to understand because these are tools slash weapons of darkness. And a lot of people have wondered, where did Chad come up with these ideas? These are dark spiritual tools and weapons created by the adversary and his minions to inflict pain on other beings, whether they are mortal or spiritual. He refers to the scriptures and he says, the scriptures refer to the arrows and darts of the adversary. So they're teaching that these dark things have weapons that they're shooting at you. And they refer to them as weapons. And they can literally injure you. And he says that. He says, though the tools and weapons are spiritual, they can cause physical discomfort and injury. He goes into types of spirits, which I'm not going to go into great detail here. But basically, it's the spirit of God, the spirit of man, and then the spirit of the devil. But it basically, is talking about good versus dark. If we remember, in the future, Lori Vallow will get a little ranking system of her family members ranked how light or dark they are. But one thing is for certain is there's a lot of spiritual beings out there that their purpose is to distract and destroy your life. So this is something Lori understands. A bad thing to teach because you don't have to deal with your own consequences. You can say, well, I was persuaded by the devil that day. And for those looking for remorse from Chad and Lori both, well, this is sort of kind of the reason you're not going to see it. Next, the veil and the spirit of man. The spirit of man represents each of us who have been born into mortality. This is something Julie loves to talk about, guys. We each have a body of spirit, light, intelligence, and energy, along with a body of flesh and bones. The veil of the spirit body is the body of flesh and bones. This veil inhibits one's ability to see spiritual realms so that each individual can live by faith rather than by sight and perfecting the flesh by obedience to the commandments of God. This body primarily uses sensory means to touch, taste, smell, sight, and sound. When we die, nothing more than the separation of the mortal body and the spirit occurs. Our spirit lives on, and we can again enjoy spiritual powers and abilities we once enjoyed before we were limited by our mortal bodies in a spiritual sphere. Sorry. Finally, weapons of light, those tools given to us by our Savior, God Himself, that allow us to combat darkness. They range from His Spirit, the Holy Ghost, temple garments, or more metaphysical things such as spiritual shields and swords. So there you go, guys. Now you know where Chad Daybell got all of this crazy stuff. These crazy ideas, at least, that's what most people think. And the one thing he's been honest about is he's not very creative. So, he's taken other people's ideas and tweaking them to fit his agenda. I'm trying my best not to judge anybody here, so forgive me if I have. This is based off of my research and my opinion. And I want to say, guys, please take a moment to subscribe right now if you like to see these videos and more to come. You can like and comment as well. We need these kind of things in order to have the support we need to have our videos pop up for other people to see them. You can give to our Patreon at Chasing a Murderer Patreon page. Don't forget to check out our missing faces. And thank you so much, guys. Love you, and I'll see you soon.